Welcome to Fresh Catholic, a podcast for those who are converting, reverting, or simply want a fresh perspective of the Catholic faith to help them to open their hearts and minds to become closer to the love and goodness of Christ. My daily prayer is that I will be a bright light to others, to be filled with the love and light of Christ, so that when people look at me, they see Him radiating out from me for His glory. Well, hello and welcome back. I'm so glad you're here. I know last week's episode was probably pretty intense and heavy for people. I know it was intense and heavy for me to go through in my life, that accident. I think where we left off was I was still living in a trailer in 110 degree temperature, wearing my halo apparatus, which was just hell on earth, but a miracle at the same time. I had to wear that apparatus for a few months, and it was just very heavy and dreadful to wear. And, I couldn't sleep very well. I was in a tremendous amount of pain. Just for a reference for everybody, instead of me just saying I was in a lot of pain, typically when somebody goes to the doctor, they'll say, what's your pain level on a scale of 1 to 10? And they say birth or even kidney stones are at a level 10. Having a halo apparatus on with the screws in your skull, in my mind, is a 15. So there's no other way for me to think about it. It was a real good solid 15. And, I had it on all day, every day for months. So I just want to, clarify that that's how much pain somebody's in when they're wearing a halo. One of the best days of my whole life was getting that halo off. July 12th, I'll never forget it. Honestly, it's in the top 5 best days of my whole life. I had to go to the doctor. They had to remove the apparatus and the screws out of my skull. And my body was so atrophied just from, being paralyzed from the neck down and not being able to function properly. I was so tiny with this huge apparatus. And when they took it off, I thought I was just going to fall over. It was a miracle to get it off. And I felt so much better, and I could go have a bath and wash my hair and could hold my children and feel their bodies and my body against their body, which was the first time with my daughter, which was miraculous. You take that for granted, but when you're not able to hold your baby up against you, that's, something that was definitely a beautiful feeling. So after the halo came off, I had to kind of re-enter into what I was hoping would be a normal life. But, I have a dent in my spinal cord, a permanent dent. My neck broke right into my spinal cord and dented it. Didn't sever it, thank heaven. But I'm what's termed an incomplete quadriplegic, which means that I move, but I have all the same traits as a quadriplegic. So a lot of the messages in my brain, some go through the dent opposite, hot and cold are opposite. Some don't go through at all, like the ability to run and jump. I know in my head how to run and jump, but it won't send it down to my body. And some things go through normal. It took me a long time to figure all that out, but I had to relearn how to do many, many things that people take for granted. I had to relearn how to do everything. And, as an adult who already knows how to do everything in your head, when you have to do them and relearn them, it's so strange. When somebody says, lift this up, move this over here, walk this far. Okay, do a button. Those darn buttons. To this day, I still can't do a lot of things. I can't run. I can't jump. I can't go up and down stairs normally without holding on to something or someone. I still can't really do buttons unless I'm looking at the buttons. And so, those things, they've never come back. But certain things I had to relearn how to do, and it was frustrating at best, but I was so determined. So I did the best I could. I also had to really come to grips with the fact that I used to be really active and really athletic. I had to give up a lot of things that were really difficult for me because I was like, things that I loved to do or things that I had dreamed about doing with my children, I had to just give those up. And, I'm not whining and complaining. I'm happy to be alive and I'm able to move and walk. But I definitely have moments of mourning, or especially when my children were little, or even my grandchildren now, where, I would have loved to do certain things with them, and I just can't, like, ever. I was an ice skater, and I've always wanted to ice skate with my children. Well, I've never got to do that. But they didn't know me before, so it wasn't like, oh, Mommy used to ice skate with us, and now she can't. So I've always been the same mommy to them, which is a blessing because, I'm the one that's grieving it, not them. And they have just always accepted it. But I've had real bad moments where, I'll be at the beach and I want to run into the water with my children or my grandchildren, and they can't, I've never been able to do that. So, giving up a lot of the things that I love to do, at first it was pretty devastating to me. I was really young when this happened. So, I have a long life ahead of me. I had to reevaluate, like, maybe different things I could do. My husband really helped me to figure that out. Instead of thinking about all the things I couldn't do, we tried to think of the things I could do. And so I look back on all the activities that I used to do, and I think, well, I'm happy I have that memory. I have those memories. So, just kind of coping with having to change, everything about what I, did before. I did go to therapy with the pastor at my church, which I was so grateful for because we didn't have any money, especially after this accident. We were paying 9 doctors before my lawsuit had finished. I'm not going to get into all the details about the lawsuit. It was a long lawsuit for a quote unquote cut and dry case. It's not that I really wanted to, seek out vengeance or anything, but, my bills were so high, somebody had to pay for these bills. I had to be in that mindset of a lawsuit for over 2 years. And it was very depressing because we were constantly talking about what I couldn't do, all my, disability, everything that had been taken away from me. And I really was starting to go into a depression because just everything was so negative, and we had no money, and we were living in this trailer with, these 2 babies, disabled. It was miserable out there. And I was just grateful that I was able to go to therapy with my pastor, and he really did help me in many, many ways. I still think about what he says today. And one of the things that I thought was really interesting was he was telling me that I was grieving myself. And I thought, I've never heard of anybody grieving themselves, like you grieve when a loved one dies or a pet dies. And he said, no, you have to think about it in these terms that you died that day in many ways. You will never be the same person. That person doesn't exist. He wasn't saying it in a doom and gloom way. He was trying to tell me that there was like a new Lori ahead, and I needed to accept that, and that it was okay to grieve myself because I was going through this grieving process, he really helped me to wrap my mind around that, to grieve the old Lori, but to look forward to the future of the new Lori. So I really, really appreciated him.
We'll be right back.
Rising anti-Semitism. New generations redefining how they connect with Jewish traditions. Changing dynamics among Jews around the globe. Take a deep dive into these topics and more on Mosaic, Exploring Jewish Issues, the podcast brought to you by the Jewish Federation of Palm Beach County. Hear from the thought leaders, politicians, scholars, and artists at the forefront of Jewish life today. Subscribe to Mosaic, Exploring Jewish Issues, wherever you listen to podcasts.
So not too much after that, not at all. I got pregnant again. The wind blew from the north, as we all know, and Lori got pregnant. And once again, my husband and I were thrilled. This was exciting news. I was so happy. I was like, oh my gosh, after all that, I was able to get pregnant. And we were just thrilled. And so I looked at it as, babies are a miracle, and I knew it was a part of the plan of what God wanted. I was not quite sure what was going on since there was a lot of risks with it. There was a tremendous amount of risks. The doctor told me that just because I was pregnant didn't mean I could or should have the baby. You're probably not going to make it through childbirth, and we recommend that you have an abortion. They just weren't sure if my body could handle it. It never entered my mind that one of my choices would be to have an abortion. I just thought, well, I'm going to go and I'm going to do whatever I have to do to have this baby. And I think that it's meant to be, and that's where I'm at. And I'll do whatever they tell me. It had to be approved by 4 different doctors for me to be able to see this baby through to birth. And I remember we called my dad, and my dad was really pressuring me to have an abortion. And I was very upset. This was not what I wanted to hear. I think that's one of the only times I've ever been really distraught by something my dad has told me. And I understand why he didn't want me to die, because, they were predicting that I was going to die in childbirth. And so he didn't want me to leave, him and my family. And I didn't want to have an abortion. I wanted to try to have the baby. So the doctors approved me having the baby, but it had a lot of restrictions and rules behind it. My injury is very complicated, and they were afraid that I was going to die because my blood pressure can't go up with my condition. I have to keep really low blood pressure. And so pretty much the entire pregnancy, I thought I was going to my death, to be honest with you. I didn't really enjoy the pregnancy because I still wasn't feeling great. I still had these other 2 babies I was trying to manage and take care of, and them being pregnant and being worried. And it was extra hard on me because I was still kind of messed up from the last baby because, I had dreamed about her, I'm pregnant with her. I'm, thinking how beautiful everything's going to be. And then I totally missed her birth. I wasn't even there. And it messed me up, So when I was, I really wanted to have this baby, and I really wanted to try to go through a normal experience. We didn't think I was going to be able to. I did anything they told me to do. I signed all the papers if they needed to do another C-section. I did say, if you do another C-section, could you just take the baby out and give me a pretty scar? I ended up actually having the baby in a normal way, which I was I was thrilled. The second he was born, it was relief, and I was fine, and the baby was healthy, and I just would not hand him over to anybody. They cleaned him barely. They sucked the stuff out of him, and then I just took him, and I wouldn't give him up because I just wanted to stare at him all the time, and that really, really helped me. Looking back now, I can definitely see it was, God's plan for me to have that 3rd baby. Even though some people didn't think it was real smart or healthy or the best timing or whatever, God knew what I needed, and he blessed me with getting pregnant. And going through that birth, that was a miracle to me. So he just knew that I needed that baby at that moment, and that was going to be the thing that was going to help me really heal mentally and emotionally. And so Cody was the best medicine. So after he was born, I just, to be honest with you, life went on. I had to figure out how to manage these children, manage myself learning how to do things and healing. And it took 3 years for me to settle into my disability, as they say. We moved back down to Ventura and Ojai to be near my family because I had all these children, and I still was, recovering, and I needed to be around my family. We needed a lot of help. So I decided when we came back to Ojai that I would try to find a church. I had to leave my very comforting church up in Oakhurst, and that was really hard to leave all those people behind. They had really helped me and changed my life, and I just had to leave them behind. So I went to a few churches, and I'm sorry to say that for me, they paled in comparison. I mean, that bar was set very high up in Oakhurst, and just the genuine love of Christ. And you have to remember, when I left Ojai, I wasn't going to church at all. I knew nothing about all this. So when I, came back, I had some knowledge, and I had some ways of things that I felt really good and comfortable with, and, that made me feel really happy. And I wasn't finding those. And so I thought, well, I'm just going to kind of do my own thing. I'm going to make up my own religion. And I'll just, read the Bible to my kids, and we'll pray. And I even homeschooled my older son for a little while. We had a Bible class in the homeschooling, and I tried to just kind of do my own thing and make my own rules about it, which I think is funny now because I know that's not the best way to do it. But I didn't want to give up on, being a Christian. I didn't want to give up on Christ, but I just didn't want to go to church. So we didn't go to church. And so then I was kind of back to that, where it's just like, okay, I'm not going to church. I'm still not learning anything. I'm still not really fully understanding, being a Christian. And I was just kind of, I don't want to say faking it, because that's not true, because I've always loved Christ. It was more, I was just kind of thought, well, I'll just put this together with bubble gum and a paperclip, and figure out how to make this work. I just look back at those years of making up my own religion, trying to it's kind of like treading water. I just felt like I was treading water, trying to keep my head up, but I wasn't really living I wasn't practicing what I was preaching. I guess that's a good way to say it. And I just kept moving forward. I just kept, I had these 3 beautiful children. I was alive. I was trying to settle into, my new way of doing things. Life went on, and one thing I noticed was my older son really struggled a lot with a lot of different things. I mean, rightly so. This poor child, had been in this horrific accident, and he was so little, he couldn't really express how he was feeling or what he was feeling. And he just really struggled. And, we just kept that in mind, that he was different than the other 2. Years and years later, when he was 12, wouldn't you know, the one and only time we leave him to go to a track meet, he stayed with friends, and he got hit by a truck. He had fractured his sinus and broke his pelvis, and he's this 6-foot-tall, 12-year-old kid. So he was, bedridden for a few weeks and incapacitated and in a lot of pain and everything. And the sad part is he had just started kind of thriving, and we were noticing like a lot of positive things that were going on with him, and then this accident happened. Soon after that, he started self-medicating with drugs and alcohol at a very young age, and I think that happens when people are in pain. We obviously weren't aware that's what he was doing at the time, but he was self-medicating because he was in so much pain, and one thing kind of led to another, and we also found out that he was suffering from mental illness. I don't want to get into a lot of it about him. That's not something I'm comfortable doing, but that was a really rough time for him. And, I think honestly, that's been the saddest, hardest part of my life is, having a child that I love so deeply. I want to help so much, and I'm so dedicated to, and I'll take my accident, my pain any day over the pain he suffers or has suffered. He is doing very well today, and I'm so grateful. The Lord has just made this into a miracle, and he has 2 beautiful children. He has a beautiful wife. He's doing very well for himself, and it just, that's a chapter I want to put a pin in. So It was also a really good learning lesson for us and our other children, because mental illness is, it's a very sad thing, and it affects a lot of people. And unless you know somebody who's mentally ill, a lot of people don't have sympathy and empathy for those people. And it really, taught my children how to recognize people who struggle, who have mental illness or depression or things like that. And, it helps you to have a more tender heart when you can live with a person like that and, experience that in real life. I know my other two children, when they were in high school, it's kind of when reality TV had first started, and everybody thought it was, for lack of a better term, oh, it's so cool, reality TV. And, they would think things were like funny or cool about drug addiction or mental illness. And my kids would say, we live this every day. It's not fun. It's not funny. It's scary. It's sad. And, I think it really helped my children to be very sympathetic and empathetic. And so that's kind of the silver lining of it all. My husband and I, had to go through a lot with this accident, the aftermath of the accident, the three children who are very close in age, our son's second accident, his mental illness. It was a lot on us and our marriage. And, we were a really good team. We were a good parenting team. I thought, this is a person I'm going to be married to for the rest of my life. I didn't see my life any other way. We had a big, beautiful house. I had 6 dogs that I adored. Everything was going along great. During what I call like this normal period of my normal, existence in life and just trying to lead a normal life, I certainly wasn't doing it correctly. Now that I look back, it was such a strange, I was not a happy person. I was lashing out at people. I would say and do things that weren't great, that I know, they're just, they didn't fall. I think if I was still up in Oakhurst, I wouldn't be doing those things, I guess is what I'm saying. My husband and I, we started to have some problems, but I just thought, everybody goes through problems, and we've been through a tremendous amount, and, we're probably, this is normal to a degree, but then we're kind of coming down off of all this, trauma and things going on. So we kind of started getting a little rocky, and I just thought we were going to make it through. We would just, work on it and work through it, but that's not what happened. Our children were grown. The youngest still lived at home, but they were all adults. So when things started getting a little bit rocky, I distinctly remember one day, and I just think this is so weird because you got to watch what you wish for or watch what you pray for. Got to watch what you say. We were having a very heated moment, and I went out on the side of the house. There was this little hidden spot on the side of the house, and I went over there because I just needed a minute, and I needed to kind of get away and find a little spot. And I went over, and I remember praying and saying, Lord, I don't think I can do this anymore. I can't live like this. I can't live with all this anger and everything. And I'm willing to give up all this. Well, I ended up losing everything. I lost the house. I lost all my dogs, my husband. Everything went, and it happened that fast. My husband decided that he was done with the marriage and he was miserable in our marriage. And so he announced to me one day that he was miserable and that he had been miserable for 6 years, and that we were just, done. And I thought we should go to therapy. He didn't want to go to therapy. So basically, within a month or two, he was moved out, and that was that. So boy, I wasn't expecting that. I I had to reshift my thinking. So I'm alone for like the first time ever, living in this house, trying to sell my house, and it was my home, and it had been my home for, a really, really long time. I had, my whole life was in there, and I was just going to have to give everything up. And, I didn't know what my future was going to hold. I wasn't even praying to God and saying, God, what do you want from me? Where am I supposed to go? What am I supposed to do? I wasn't even relying on him. I wasn't even seeking him out. I was starting to go off the deep end again, like I had done when I was 13 and how I had done when I was 21. And I thought, I'm going to go off the deep end again. I'm going to become not a wildcat, but a cougar. I was worried about that. Funny, not funny. I was worried because I thought this is what I tend to do. And so I was just really, kind of starting to drown, go down again. And I look back now and I think, I don't know why I wasn't praying more or why I wasn't reaching out to God. And that was a mistake. But again, God always has the best plan. I don't think I was being punished by God, but I think, I definitely wasn't going down the right path, and he had to shake up my world again to get me to start going down the correct path, the path he wanted me to go down. I look back now and I think he really had to clean my slate. He really had to get rid of all those material things. He had to get rid of all those things that were distracting me. He had to kind of, like they say when you're in the military and they kind of knock you down in boot camp and kind of strip you down so that, you'll come back stronger. I feel like if I never would have gotten that divorce, I would have never become Catholic. There would have been no way that would have been my path with this husband. I had to leave that old life behind in order to move towards becoming Catholic. However, at the time, I didn't know that was what was coming. But, sometimes you have to just go with what, the Holy Spirit's trying to guide you to do. And I'll tell you about my conversion story next week, which just even saying it out loud gives me chills because it makes me so happy. My life just took such an amazing, beautiful turn. And I just am so grateful that I followed what God wanted me to do, and I just was a willing participant, and it's the best thing that's ever happened to me, and I can't wait to share it with you next week. Thank you for joining me today. Now go out and be a bright light in someone's life, and remember, be focused, be faithful, and be fresh.